Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
Good afternoon, Michael Malice here, and let that be your problem for the next hour. We have with us, our collabs continue, Dave Smith, host of Part of the Problem, 1/3 of Legion of Skanks, which is now on twice a week, and his comedy special Libertas, which is available everywhere, hit #1 on iTunes. Which is how when people tell you that you're not relevant, it's like, I would think #1 is of some relevance.
For those 3.5 weeks, it felt pretty relevant, but all right.
It's like, I'm only #1 for a month, but I guess I don't matter to anyone. I find it very funny when people on Twitter are like, well, I've never heard of you, therefore you don't exist. It's like, do you even understand how like egotistical you sound?
It's the same thing. It's the same dynamic as when people say that they can't comprehend something and they think that that's an argument. Like that is a reflection of you. You know, we've talked about I can't comprehend how anyone could vote for Trump. All right. Well, 73 million people did. So this is a you problem that you can't comprehend where these people are.
Maybe one of them can answer you.
Yeah, right.
Just one. You can find them anywhere on social media. Just throw a rock or just do hashtag MAGA. Yeah, it's amazing. What I want to talk to you about first was a lot of times, like you'll do Rogan or some of these other shows, and I and many people just sit at home and cheer. And it's really kind of fun to watch like views that I agree with and endorse, like being presented in such an unapologetic, consistent, that's your word, manner, because I think people respond both to good ideas, but they also respond well to good presentation. I gotta tell you, it takes a lot for me to lose my cool, but I was not going to back down on my acab rant when I was on Tim Pool's show last week, again, with Alex Jones, and they kept trying to, and that line, this is for everyone at home. If you have a little kind of syllogism in your head, steal my line. Say, I'm going to start from the beginning until I get this out. Do not, and then just do it like a robot. Just hit start, hit restart. At some point, they're going to get the hint, and then you're going to get to say your piece. So please feel free to steal that from me. Have you ever had to do that when you were dealing with like two other people, like, and you're like, they just will not let you get a word in, other than skanks every 5 minutes?
No, I'm sure I have been in that situation, although one doesn't come to mind right away. But that moment with you and Alex Jones and Tim Pool was incredible, because it had like all of the perfect makings for this awesome moment where you have two people who are like not comfortable going as far as you, but are open enough to the ideas that they can't really deny the merit of what you're saying. And even then, Tim starts giving all these examples afterward, like these random stories through the years of what cops have done. It's just really backing up what you were saying. And Alex Jones now is left, and you could tell, by the way, he feels uncomfortable because he's now in the position of being the moderate in the room, which is not a position Alex
the
Jones.
Government authority.
Yes, yeah. And so then he starts screaming because that's his overcompensation for not being the alpha radical in the room, but you're just sitting there like, nope, I'm not letting you off. This is what the situation is. This is what cops are. I also think that in addition to the point you made about the presentation and being unapologetic, there's also something about the element of passion. And you were like, you could just tell. It was this moment where you were like, no, I believe this so much that I refuse to not say this, and I refuse to hold back 1 inch. And there's something about that that's a really important element to the recipe as well. It's like if someone tells you about a movie, like if I was just like, dude, I just saw this movie. Holy shit, Michael, this is the greatest movie ever. Like if I'm so excited about it, it immediately is going to get you kind of excited about it too. Like you're like, well, Jesus, now I I gotta watch this. It's
or
like,
at least
this
hear
is,
you out.
yeah, like this seems like you loved it so much. Maybe I could get a little bit of that too. That seems cool. And it was this beautiful, pure anarchist philosophy with a more than competent communicator who really believes what he's saying. And I love those moments. Those are the essence of that is why I'm an anarchist. It's just this idea that like you reduce everybody else to these arguments of like, yeah, but you know, they're not all bad.
It's Pelosi's fault.
Yeah, it's Pelosi's fault. And really what was Alex Jones' argument? It was like, well, you know, I used to attack the cops too, but now I say change the system. And it's like, well, yeah, okay, if there wasn't the system giving them the orders, then they wouldn't be enforcing these horrible rules. Or if they didn't enforce these horrible rules, then they wouldn't be enforcing these horrible rules. Like, how exactly, like, what is the logic of the argument that they're not, at the very least, equally to blame? Like how do they just skate when they're willing to? Yeah, Patrice O'Neill used to say this, and it was such a great point. Where he used to say, he goes, fuck that whole excuse that it's your job. Like, fuck you. Like, what, this thing where you're like, what? You're like, oh, I got a family to feed. It's like, so you'll destroy someone else's family because you have a family? What type of logic is that?
Not only is obedience un-American, it's downright amoral. If you're saying, I'm going to hand over my moral judgment to my boss, having that moral judgment, that conscience, is what separates us from the lower animals. That's the big one. It's that we have this ability to understand right and wrong and make those decisions accordingly. And if you say, I'm just going to hand this over to somebody else, you have given up, and you and I have made this point repeatedly, a very fundamental aspect of what it means to be a human being. And talk about slippery slopes. This is the slippery slopes. And I'm not even talking about, like, let's suppose someone's like a drug dealer and you have it in your head that therefore they're going to cause all this crime, so it's okay to shoot them. I'm talking about you're closing down a little girl's lemonade stand. Like, that to me is almost more monstrous, because you're like, this is such a simple lemonade on a hot day. This little girl she made it herself. She's stirred on the country time. Okay, there's no lemons involved. That's fine. It's just sugar and acid. But she's standing there greeting people on the street. Like, who doesn't want to be in that neighborhood where that, and you're going to go there and you're going to say, shut it down? You are absolute garbage as a human being. And you cannot tell me, if your job entails you harassing innocent children, you're despicable. Yeah. You're as bad of an apple as it gets.
No, of course, you're absolutely right, and that's in that example. But let me say this: there's lots of cops in America who have never shut down a little kid's lemonade stand, but there is not one cop in America who's never brought someone into jail for nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean not even just like a victimless nonviolent crime. I mean the pettiest, driving with a suspended license or something like that. You know, like the pettiest crime. Now, you can say, oh, they didn't do jail time, but you put a human being in chains and forcefully took them to a cage for the night. You have no idea how that affected that person's life. How many of those people, we don't even measure this stuff. How many of those people just were no calls, no shows for work the next day and got reprimanded, and then a month later had some other little fuck up and lost their job now over that? And that fucked up their marriage. This is the type of thing that men commit suicide over. Like, you have no idea how much you've fucked over someone's life. And I'm sorry. I actually think that, truthfully, you know, people go back when the just following orders thing always invokes Nazism, you know, and like the you know,
well,
attempted,
explicitly, that's where it comes from.
Right. The defense that was given at the Nuremberg trial that was deemed ridiculous and you know, rightfully so. But I actually think you could make a very strong argument that cops in America are more morally culpable than Nazis were. I mean, you can quit in America.
Yeah, right.
There will be no ramifications. You can just quit and just go get another job, and that's it. They're not. It's like nothing else happens to you. That was not the case in Hitler's Nazi Germany. And so I actually think that you have, in many ways, you could say someone in, say, North Korea who's just following orders has a better moral excuse than somebody in the United States of America, where you can literally just go provide for your family in some other way and no one's going to crack down on you. There's no threat from the state that, oh, you've disobeyed them and now you and your family will suffer because of this. You could just go live your life.
A good guy doesn't put his hands on a peaceful person. I mean, that is just one very basic principle. Another very basic principle is you see this all the time when you criticize the police. It's that, well, you know, like if you don't like fix your attitude, they're just going to sit on their hands while you're like someone breaks into your house. It's like, what other job are you comfortable saying, I'm not going to do my job, even if it causes other human beings grievous bodily harm or massive property destruction, unless I'm treated with the reverence I deserve? So it's not enough that you have to get paychecks. I have to get on my knees and suck on and tell you how great you are. No, I'm not interested. And it's also insane. Well, just one more thing. Like, who else has a job where you just take it as a matter of course that other people are going to help you for free? Can you imagine like you and I are like standing like by the gas studios, digital studios, and we're just going to grab people in the street, be like, hey, I need more people to watch this show because I'm fighting for the side of good. Can you post these flyers everywhere? I have a tough job. Why don't you help me? It's so crazy.
And the idea that people would just accept that, well, they might violently assault some other people, but you know, the job's really important. It'd be like if you're like, hey, that plumber just grabbed my wife's ass. And you were like, yeah, well, those drains aren't going to unclog themselves. I mean, like somebody's got to unclog the drains.
I have a set of drains. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, okay. But yeah, right. But like, you're like, okay, how about I want the job done without all of this, these other things? Like, yes. Okay. Right. Protection of people and property is an important service, but there's like a million important services. Keeping the power grid going is a really important service. You know, like there's lots of things that are very, very important. Very important. Very important. You know, you have no idea how important truckers are. You know, you get out on the highway and it's just every 5 seconds you're passing another truck. Yeah, that's how people eat. That it's because of that. Okay. And it doesn't matter. You don't have to accept that, oh, there'll also be this level of violence against innocent people that comes with a very important job. There's no need to accept that.
I summed this up in one tweet that in 2020, the cops were harder on business owners than they were on business looters. And when you put it in those terms, you can't deny it. I mean, what other job are you in a position where your boss like, you know what, we're not working again today and things are burning down, but we're not going to let them defend themselves either. It's so deranged, the perception. And here's the other thing. We're so blue-pilled. Like they're like, I'd like you to walk a mile in their shoes. It's like, okay, we all have the idea for all the police shows and movies that cops are basically shot at 100 times a day, and that it's like the most dangerous thing on earth. There was a website I found called like Fallen Heroes Remembrance Fund or something like that, and I looked up how many cops were killed in the line of duty in 2000, and the number is 44. That is a tragedy. It shouldn't be 44, but the way they make it out, you would think that cops are falling every single day. And Ed Stringham, who you and I both know, did the math, and he said per capita, you're more likely to be shot to death as an average male in America than you are as a police officer.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Those
Three
numbers,
times as many cops died from COVID as died from gunshot wounds in 2000, according to this chart.
Well, I'll say, and I think, you know, whenever you talk about like if you talk about the number of police shootings or when police kill people, they will control in that for like unarmed people. How many unarmed people did cops shoot, and how many where it wasn't, you know, like if there was that situation, where was it? I can't remember what city it was in, where the guy charged the cop with a knife and he lit him up. And everyone kind of calmed down about that. And they're like, look, man, you charge someone with a knife who has a gun, you're going to get shot. So I think that's reasonable. If a cop is defending himself,
of course.
Then of course, right? But then what's the flip side of that? If you're talking about cops shot in the line of duty, then I also kind of want to know the information, like, was that person defending themselves? What did the cop do? I mean, like, and from my position and your position, morally speaking, if the cop was initiating violence against the person and posed a real threat to that person, then okay, I think we have to treat that the same way as we do with the cops, which is basically the essence of the anarchist philosophy, is that we're, morally speaking, we're all human beings, and there's no class of people that are on some higher moral level. I don't care if you have a blue shirt and a shiny badge, you still have to operate under the rules of morality the same way everyone else does, and I'm going to judge you the same way I judge everybody else. So I remember back when there was the Freddie Gray case. I can't remember when that was, like 2014, 2015, something like that. He was the guy in Baltimore who they gave the rough ride to. They fucking strapped him in and put him in the back of a paddy wagon, and he broke his neck because they were driving around. These fucking thugs just tortured this guy to death. And he ran. He ran from the cops. And a bunch of, the fucking blue-pilled right-wingers would be like, well, why are you running? If you got nothing to hide, why are you running? And then they listed his rap sheet. And they're like, he's been arrested 12 times. And I forget these numbers exactly, but it was something like this. And they go, he's been arrested 12 times. And then I remember doing my podcast and pointing out, yeah, and he has 3 convictions. So the other 9 times he was kidnapped by armed thugs and then determined that there was nothing to it. And they let him go. So imagine any other group of people who had kidnapped you 9 times, and then you saw them and ran. And you were like, well, what are you running from? You're like, I don't know. The group of thugs who kidnap me regularly.
It's like a horror movie.
Yeah, really.
Or like a nightmare.
Yeah.
One of the other points I want people to understand is that a lot of people are completely not in a position to begin to wrap their heads around any of these ideas. Like you said earlier, they can't comprehend this. And you need to understand that they're awash. Like if you have these ideas and people come at you in social media, be like, you're a moron, this doesn't make sense, you're a moron, this doesn't make sense. That person's position has not changed at all. It's not, if you're going to talk to a room full of 100 people and you expect to change 100 minds, you're a crazy person. That's not happening. But if you're talking, but change is marginal, incremental. If you're talking to 100 people and 90 of them think you're a moron, well, they don't matter one way or another. They came in one way, they're leaving the other way. Maybe they don't like you. Who cares? If one of them comes around to your position and 5 or 6 of them are like, okay, I've never heard this before, it doesn't sound as unreasonable as I thought before, that is the path to victory. That is how you change minds. And if there was a tweet that went viral, or this was trending on Twitter, excuse me, where they're saying Matthew McConaughey speaks out against like Trump fans and the far left. And I screen capped and I said, if your path to victory is based on persuading people who think this is interesting or of value, you're done. Like those people are ballast. They will never matter one way or another. It's not a numbers game in terms of getting the majority. It's a numbers game of, if you could persuade 100 senators and no Americans, or 9 Supreme Court justices, it's completely a function of elitism. And this idea that every voice matters equally is just demented.
Yeah. And it's based in like no empirical reality.
Right.
There's never been a situation where in any society where it wasn't really the top 10%, and that might be being generous,
right,
who are like shaping the society, and the other 90% basically follow and will defend the same NPCs who will defend the current establishment to death. If we had an anarchist society, would just be defending anarchy to death, because they'll just defend whatever is presented to them as the right thing. As the, we talk about, we use the red pill analogy a lot, and which comes from The Matrix, of course. And I think my favorite scene in The Matrix, maybe not as a movie, my favorite scene, but my favorite scene that applies to all our conversations about red pilling and stuff, is when Morpheus is explaining that. So one of the things, such a great thread in the movie, is that the agents can basically jump into any NPC's body. So they can jump into anyone who's still plugged in and just take them over and become an agent. And so Morpheus is explaining that. He goes, all these people around you, all these blue-pilled people, they're our enemies, even though they're the very people we want to save. And you kind of go in knowing that all of them, you're just trying to red pill as many as you can, while knowing that the rest are your enemies still. It's a very weird dynamic, but like, yeah, it's not about winning over the masses. It's about winning over as many as we can. And it doesn't have to be anything even approaching 50% of the population. Believe me, if we had a really forceful, badass, intelligent 10% of this population, we've got it. it's over. They're like, that's it.
One of the things that I saw happening, and people ask me often how I could be so optimistic, and I am shocked that they don't see. Now, I can see how they would be like, okay, I get where you're coming from. I don't agree, but they don't see it at all. Like over the weekend, they were asking about Hunter Biden and this investigation into what's going on with him in Ukraine and his taxes. I think he's under investigation in Delaware. And Nancy Pelosi said something to the effect of Kevin McCarthy, who's the House Minority Leader, that it's only like the QAnon people who are interested in hearing about this. And it's just like, now they're at the point where I can understand, like I said this on Twitter, I said early this year when they were condemning Trump for calling it like the Wuhan flu, and they were saying it's racist to talk about its geographical origin, that at least it has some kind of internal coherence and logic to it, right? Mm-hmm. It's clear propaganda, it's nonsensical, but it makes sense on its terms. What does this have to do with QAnon? It has absolutely nothing to do with QAnon, but it's amazing because it's like, oh, sure, we might have been compromised by a Chinese spy, but there's this online conspiracy theory which you've never mentioned. But since you disagree with me, you think this is about interdimensional pedophiles, so I don't have to address your point. And that is not what happens when you have control of the megaphone. Hey guys, Michael Malice here. I want to tell you about my favorite sponsor. That is Sheath Underwear, SHEATH underwear.com. If you use promo code Malice20, you get 20% off your order. What is Sheath Underwear? I wear them every day. They're boxer briefs that are the most comfortable you will ever wear. And what Sheath has that is unique is these dual pouches to keep your man parts separated. You're going to try them on. You're going to be like, what is this? And then you're going to be like, oh, that's why he keeps talking about it all the time, because these are really special and unique, and it makes you feel comfortable. If you use promo code Malice20, you get 20% off your order. And they've got a whole line of girl underwear too, but I don't know what's going on with the pouches there because the girls have their own pouches. So that's a whole different situation. Go to sheathunderwear.com, Malice20, tell them I sent you, and you will be thanking me, I assure you. You'll get my pants. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I've talked about this a lot over the last few years, that I think the real white pill, the real silver lining to all of this is that if you look at the way the ruling elite are behaving, this is not the way that a confident ruling elite behave. When they know that they've got their citizenry controlled and they know that they can get their agenda across and there's no concern about this. If you look back at like the 1950s in America, that's a much more confident ruling elite. Yeah. They know that they've got this whole thing controlled. Right now, they're behaving the way a dying animal behaves, wildly lashing out, throwing these these completely unsustainable rules around that they know. And that is in itself a silver lining. It's also, to your white pill point, the thing that's so crazy to me that people can't realize is that you think like, okay, 1861 was not that long ago. Like it's like your grandfather's father. You know what I mean? Like this is not that long ago. And at this point, what the ruling elite had was, hundreds of thousands of men in literal slavery in the South. Then Abraham Lincoln enslaved a huge portion of men in the North to go fight and die over the slavery in the South. And it was just literally people getting torn up, like just torn up by pre-industrial weaponry, and then just bleeding out, dying in the middle of a field somewhere. And there was nothing you could do. Nothing you could do. You could maybe hope to survive, to hobble back to a life where you would live on, adjusted for modern inflation, maybe 70 cents a day for the rest of your life. That was your hope to survive, to go live with one foot and farm for the rest of your life. What do you mean? What do you mean you're black-pilled today? What the fuck are you talking about? Things are so much better, so much infinitely better. And it's like, yeah, we got problems, like everyone's got problems. Every generation had problems, but things are not, you have to work really hard to think that things are so hopeless right now as compared to almost any other time.
Yeah, I just also love the idea that some of these boomer cons are like, Joe Biden is going to institute like communist rule over America. It's just like,
yeah.
It's like, where do you even start? What does that word mean to you? It means the same thing as white supremacist means to the left. It just means I don't like you.
Well,
so it's kind of funny. Go ahead.
Just on that, right? Because I was talking about this. I did like another one of these debates on against a Libertarian Party guy who was nicer than the last guy, but just the arguments were oof. It was a doozy. But he was saying at one point.
Wait, I got to interrupt you. Why don't we have a debate and let's see if one of us has to be the blue-pilled guy?
That would be fun.
That would be fun.
That would really be fun.
Be good
like
at
a mock debate and debate the blue-pilled perspective. Ooh,
yeah,
I like that idea.
We'll have to flip a coin.
Okay, we'll flip a coin. We'll do that. Okay, that's a really great idea. Maybe that'll be our next episode. That's great. All right, but let me make the point that I was making, right? So this guy was saying...
Wait, let's make it an event publicly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it. 100%.
Let's do it. That is the one.
So that is an unbelievable idea. Okay, so...
I got to get my Joe Jorgensen button and my porcupine clothes. And my Batman, I'm dressed as Batman.
Oh, shit. That's going to be great. All right,
this is
I love that
great.
idea.
Yeah.
So to your point about calling Joe Biden, a communist. So this guy I was debating, he was really concerned that there was an alt-right infiltration into the Libertarian Party. And I was trying to like explain this to him, where you're just like, look, man, I feel like so many people who are concerned about the alt-right in the Libertarian Party just know nothing about them, like have no idea what you're talking about. And it's almost a similar thing to you when they're like, oh, this Joe Biden guy represents the communists. Like, you hate communists so much. Take 5 seconds to learn about what they are. Because, what I said in the debate was, this is like when Sean Hannity talks about the far left Hillary Clinton. And it's like, go talk to anybody who's a leftist and call Hillary Clinton the far left, and they will laugh in your face, and they'll be right to do it, because it is absurd if you think that's what the far left is. It has nothing to do with Hillary Clinton. They think Bernie Sanders is a moderate. Okay, they have nothing to do with that. But at the same time, I go, what do you know about the alt-right that you think they're interested in joining the Libertarian Party? A party that has open borders as one of its planks to support candidates like the Libertarian Party runs. Like the opinion of libertarianism on the alt-right ranges from it's weak and it's essentially a stand-down order to white people and could never use the heavy hand of the state to crush the left the way we need to. And then the other end of the range is it's a Jewish conspiracy created to destroy the West.
Or it's cringe and embarrassing and autism.
Like that. But that's the range of opinion on it from the alt-right. None of them are joining the Libertarian Party, but it's the same thing with thinking Joe Biden is a communist. It's like you're worried about this ideology that you know nothing about. You know nothing about. Joe Biden is the credit card company's man in the Senate. That's who he is. Does that sound like communism to you? Because it's quite different.
What was his reaction when you said that?
Oh, I mean, dude, it was really cringy.
Was it just like a spurg out?
Yeah, he pulled up a meme that offended him that was shared.
No, you're lying. You're lying.
Yeah. Oh, it gets so much worse.
No.
It gets so much worse. He said that the meme violated the non-aggression principle. I'm not making that up. I'm not making it up.
No.
It was rough. It was rough. Yeah.
Wait. How do you do it? It's funny. People ask me how I do it on Twitter. Like with that, I can just take one tweet and dismiss someone. I'm not locked in an interaction with them for an hour.
Yeah, me and you have very different sensibilities in these ways. And it's not, I don't think one is right or wrong. I think we have different personalities. But there's something about it that I like. I like doing those debates. I like having one on the calendar. I like having one coming up. It feels like there's something that is exciting and keeps me sharp about it. And what it is that I think I'm basically putting my career on the line.
Okay.
Like if one of these guys were to take me out in a debate, then I lose everything. I lose every ounce of credibility that I have. And it's almost like, to me, like there's something about that's exciting, that it's kind of like, okay, well, here you go. I'll put all my chips in against you. It's like, a boxer fighting an unranked opponent. It's like, okay, you get knocked out by this dude, you are done. You fall from the rankings instantly because this guy landed a punch on you. And there's something about that I enjoy. It kind of that gets my juices going. And the other thing about it is
just
the
juice with you people.
It's always about. Did I say juice? I meant Jews. It keeps my Jews going. I've got a team of Jews who work behind me at all times. But it's also something where I feel like there are these people who like will hurl these accusations at myself and you and lots of other like good people who are my friends. And then I feel like, okay, well, if you're going to do that, come mano a mano with me, and I'm going to destroy you. Like I'm in front of an audience, and I enjoy that.
What would you say was the best point he made?
I mean, if you go watch it, that's a real challenge. It's a real challenge.
Really like that? It's really. I mean,
it was like, he. I'd have to think about it. I really don't know. There weren't really any solid points. I'm really trying my best to be generous.
Okay, so it's just more like, but the racist, you're allowing this. How can you talk to this person and that person? Blah blah blah.
Well, one of the things that was really interesting too, and this is I don't know if this is like a blue-pilled characteristic or it's something, but he said, so he was talking about racism and he mentioned David Duke maybe 6 or 7 times throughout the debate, just mentioned David Duke. And I finally said to him at one point, I went, hey dude, I'm just curious. And I'm not defending David Duke. I don't know anything about David Duke.
You haven't read Jewish Supremacy?
No.
I have a signed copy.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I told him, I was like, look, I've read, I said in the thing, I go, I'm not going to defend David Duke. I'll leave that to the ghost of Murray Rothbard. But I said, look, I've read like a few excerpts of David Duke, like literally little excerpts that I've seen posted here or there. And I've seen a couple interviews. Like I remember when he was on CNN with Wolf Blitzer and they did a hit piece on him and he battled with Wolf Blitzer. I know he ran for governor in the 90s, but I don't really know. But he had mentioned David Duke so many times. And he was talking about David Duke style racists who believe other races are subhuman and don't deserve rights. And I just asked him, I go, is that David Duke's position? Like, would David Duke say that that's his position? Would he say other races are subhuman and do not deserve rights? I'm just curious. And his response was, he goes, well, I don't know. I mean, he's pretty high up there in the KKK. And I went, no, he was like in the KKK in his 20s or something like that. He's like in his 80s now. Like there's not, what? And I know nothing about the guy, but he had invoked him like 7 times. And then when pushed, he goes, well, I'm just assuming. Just assuming that's what he believes.
Did he use that word?
Well, no, but his word his word was, well, he's very high up in the KKK. And I was like, what? No, he's not. I mean, that's just not, that's factual. So it's almost like they're very comfortable just throwing out, using an example that they themselves know nothing about. And almost being like shocked that you would ever even call them on that. It's like, well, obviously I've been told by everyone that David Duke is the poster boy of Mr. Awful Racist. So of course, David Duke. And you're like, well, I don't know anything about him. Like, so what do you? And the answer is no.
I do.
Well, no, you do. I'm talking to him.
I know. But it's if you really want to hit him, realize that a lot of the alt-right think David Duke is completely cringe and they think he does more harm than good. So that's a whole other little can of worms for you to bring up with the next one of these people that you talk to.
Sure.
Or maybe I shouldn't be giving you this ammo for our debate. This is going to be epic. We have to find a place where it's open where we could have this event.
Yeah, that's going to be, I'll tell you, coming up, that might be more of a challenge than...
You think so?
I think restrictions are just getting tighter and tighter through the winter.
But maybe there's going to be some state where they're like, screw this.
Yeah. No, I'm sure if we could get creative, and what'll happen now is that our listeners will get creative for us.
Oh, I definitely love unsolicited advice. If you want to put something in malice.locals.com, that's certainly an appropriate place.
Dude, I saw someone did one of the things. It's just so funny to observe, like the tweets that were both tagged in. So like you had one of those polls that you put me in, and then you had like a great caveat. Like you were like, of these people, who's done more for the liberty movement? And then you went, if you don't understand what of these people means, please don't answer. And then someone just answered. Or
feel the need to add to this list.
Please
ignore this poll.
And then someone else like added to the list, and I just see it because I'm tagged in it also. also. And then like 2 more tweets down the thread, they go, oh man, I'm blocked. What happened?
I don't understand, because here's the other thing.
Have you not figured this out yet? He's going to block you.
But there's nothing to figure out. It's like asking this. It's like, here's a poll. Which would you rather eat? A steak, diarrhea, your mom's ass, or like uranium? That's not a poll. So if they're like Ron Paul, it's like, yeah, if I have Ron Paul, Tom Woods, Dave Smith, Joe Jorgensen, and Gary Johnson, it's going to be 100% Ron Paul.
Right.
Like, that's not even a question. What's the point of a poll like that?
Right.
This way, there's actually room for choice, and that's why it's of these. I'm not just being arbitrary. Because they'll be like, well, the obvious answer is this. That's right. That's why he's not on the list, because he is the obvious answer. This is not a question. None of these 4 people would, if any of these 4 people got any votes, they would say, you messed up. You need to vote for Ron Paul. Really. This is very clear.
Yes, really.
So it's just absolutely maddening. But that's the other thing, when they're like, and it's funny because my followers now see this. And they're like, did you not, there's only 2 sentences here. Did you not read the parenthetical? And they're like, well, I guess it's not that I just realized it was so sensitive around here. It's just like, I can't help you. It's, it was like that Family Guy cutaway, like I think in season 1, where there's a button on the wall that just says, do not touch. And Peter looks at it and then looks away and looks at it, looks away, looks at it, looks away. And then he touches it. And this guy in a gi comes out, Asian guy, bows before him and just kicks him in the head and knocks him out and just bows and walks away. It's like, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah,
and
really.
also, I love the idea that it's like, oh, yeah, Ron Paul. I never heard of that guy. When I think libertarianism, have you heard of this guy, Ron Paul? Who? Isn't he a doctor? Like, like he's some kind of educator, right? Like Joe Biden, he's a doctor.
Yeah, that's right. They're all the same.
They're all the same. That got me real triggered. But it's good to kind of weed out see, you and I, our person is different in this regard. You're much more of an open borders person when it comes to your followers, and I'm a velvet rope guy. And this gives me an excuse to kind of weed out the undesirables, to use some alt-right terminology.
You made yourself the alt-righter and the open borders guy all in once. or I'm the open borders guy.
You're the open borders guy.
I got that wrong. No, you're right. You're very alt-right. You're consistent there.
I'm the most consistent in that, for
What? Oh, no.
God, that was just a perfect little gif. What? Okay, this is something I also wanted to talk to you about, which is a moment that I'm sure a lot of the audience is going to be very, very interested in, which is I got to meet Tulsi Gabbard when I was in DC last week. And let me get to the punchline. She laughed in my face. Okay. It was one of these completely out of character moments for me. And it was so embarrassing and humiliating. And I deserved every minute of it. And people rarely get to see me like this. So Ben Domenech set it up, head of the Federalist. Him and Meghan McCain, his wife, your best friend, they're close with her after Tulsi appeared on The View. And, I'm like, Ben, you have to make this happen. So he's like, she's going to be really busy. It turned out she was introducing this bill and she was trending the next day to make Title IX based on biological sex and not on gender identity. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so she's outside the Capitol building with Ben. I walk up, we all have our masks on, and I am completely spurging out, completely, because I was DMing with her a couple of times, and not that long before I said, hey, she was launching some podcast or something. I'm like, hey, would love to have you on the show. And her answer is something like, boy, what an innovative new medium. It was like a complete, go F yourself. It was the most corporate, humiliating. It's like, hey, would you like to have a date sometime? I enjoy a restaurant. It was just like, oh God, kill me. So I thought up until it happened that she was going to flake. Plus, if she's really busy with bills and voting, her schedule's got to be, pretty darn tight. So she's there with Ben, and I walk up to them, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited to meet you. And they start laughing, and I'm totally a mess. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm an immigrant, so meeting someone like this is just such an exciting thing. And now they're laughing harder. Okay, and it is so bad. And I'm trying to explain, like when I had Kirsten Hagelin on my show, former Miss America, it has this meaning, and they're just laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing. And it's like the kid in high school reading an essay, and he peed his pants, and he doesn't realize he peed his pants. And they're laughing at his pants full of pee, and he thinks they're laughing what he's saying, so he starts reading it faster, and they're laughing even more, and it's just this death spiral. I'm exaggerating a little, but not a lot. And the thing is, I told her I was so nervous because she's so like regal, but I'm in the cab going to see her. I text Ruben. I'm like, dude, I'm freaking out. Like, I'm freaking out. He goes, I promise you will hit it off immediately. I'm like, all right. She is such a bro, and it makes sense because she's in the military.
Yeah.
So she's not this like holier than thou like figure. She really is this kind of bro type dude, not like a stupid way, but like can obviously hang with the guys. So that really kind of put me at ease. We had a great talk, and there's some things that's going to happen next year, which I can't talk about publicly, but it's going to be really, really fun. And here's the other thing about her, which I think people are getting very excited to hear. She is not walking away to the wilderness. Like, she is ready to go ham. She's very, very bright. She's tough as nails.
Well, that's another thing. That's another thing about being in the military, right? Like, she's not afraid of this fight.
Right. Yeah. So she was so ready, like, okay, let's go. Yeah. And I was just talking to her about certain things, and it's just like, okay, wow, you really are. Either you're the real deal, or you're one of these politicians who's so great at it that like you know how to turn the pants off everybody. I mean, she was first elected the Hawaii, Honolulu or something city council like age 21. It was something completely crazy. So it was. But go ahead.
She's an interesting figure, and of course she was to say she was my favorite candidate on the Democratic side would be like a gross understatement. She was the only candidate that I found interesting when at the beginning of the primary.
Marianne Williamson.
You know what? I should say that she was interesting. And I'll tell you, one of the things, so Murray Rothbard wrote about this, which I thought was a really, really good point he made that was an underappreciated point, where he would say, and it was one of the reasons why he loved populism so much, is that he said the elite go through painstaking efforts to keep politics boring.
Yeah.
They really like it boring. And that's why if you think about who the preferred elite candidates are, they're almost always boring candidates. A few exceptions here or there, but in general, they really like they like Jeb Bush, they like Hillary Clinton, they like these people, and they like things boring and complicated when it comes to politics, because this, convinces people that this isn't really for you. There's nothing to get, the masses aren't going to get roused up, which is their biggest fear, usually, that like rousing up the masses, because they might just come and take your shit because you've been screwing them over for too long. And so this is part of the reason why they hate Trump so much. They do not like stuff like that. Right-wing populism does not fly over well with them. And they also don't like Bernie Sanders. They don't like people like that. And I just appreciate when somebody's interesting, because if you think about it, you gotta work really hard to make leaders boring. Leaders are by nature not boring, and anybody who's ever led you in anything, like a good coach, is always exciting. Like nobody who's really a good leader is boring. And so I love Tulsi with her anti-war stuff. I felt she could have gone a little further on it, but whatever. I was so disappointed when she endorsed Joe Biden. And then I got to say, I loved seeing that she introduced this bill, the Title IX thing. And then she also introduced or co-sponsored another bill that was banning like late-term abortion or something along those lines. And not even that I care so much about those particular issues. I mean, I do care about both of them, but it's not even so much about the issues. It's about the fact that I go, oh, see, you're being interesting again now. You're like a Democrat who's taking these positions that's only going to get you grief from the base, and you don't give a shit about it. And there's something about that I really like. Like, okay, keep being interesting. We need more interesting people.
Yeah. This is also why it was so important for me to meet her. Every so often I'll give talks to like young, like people in the liberty movement. And one of the pieces of advice I tell them, and I'll tell this to everyone right now, is if you know someone's in town that you're even acquaintances with and it's their birthday, take them out for dinner. And I go full line rant. I go, do it for yourself. And they always laugh. And I go, no, think about it. That guy who takes people out for their birthday is awesome. That could be you. There's literally nothing. It's $20. That person will remember it forever. It'll be a fun night. It's a special moment. And you get to be the kind of person that you want to be. So I said to and this is how I became friends with Tom. No disrespect to him. I was not swimming in these circles at the time. All my friends were like, oh my God, Tom Woods. Oh my God, Tom Woods. Oh my God, Tom Woods. Correctly. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to be friends with this person because my friends are going to think this is so impressive. And I became friendly with him. Then we became, super close because he is such a badass in every way. But it's the kind of thing where, meeting her and having that picture on Instagram, like I want people to understand this is like another big white pill. There's so many things to be optimistic for. And you're like, I want to do X and I want to give you evidence that if you decide to do X, you can make X happen. It's not that crazy. Now, if anyone listening thinks they're going to meet me or be friends with me, they're sadly mistaken. That is not, I'm no Tulsi Gabbard. I'm not interested in shaking hands and getting elected.
That does not fall under the category of X. That is why.
That is,
and why cannot happen.
Why are you talking to me? But I mean, that's the other thing. Before we went on the first time, I said this on the air, me, Tim Pool, and Alex Jones, it was like none of us knew what that was going to look like. But we knew this is the kind of thing you don't see on network TV or even cable TV. And that is what makes things fun and exciting. And it falls on us, like me, you, and all these other people, to be making things that have never been done before. And it was funny. I was standing there with me, Tulsi, and Ben from the Federalist. And I was saying, I think the three of us can have an argument over who loves America more. And we could really have this hardcore debate. I mean, she joined the military. Ben from the Federalist, I mean, is as patriotic as it gets. And I certainly absolutely adore this country. So it was kind of a very funny, poignant moment. And I really hope that some people be like, all right, this is still a place where cool things happen. And I'm just getting warmed up because I'm not even done with 2020. I'll tell you off the air just to spite the audience. And then you already know one of the things that's going on in 2021. So I'm just excited for that. What are you most excited for in 2021?
I'll tell you in terms of, I mean, like personal stuff. I'm just excited for my daughter just turned 2 and this is like the greatest age ever. And I can't wait. When she turns 3, my nephew's 3, it was easier for me to spend a week in North Korea than to have him here for an hour. I could not handle it because I've got a lot of stuff in my house. And just because I have a bunch of Lego from the 80s does not mean it's for you, little boy. And apparently he did. So Fabuland was a disaster. I guess it does mean it's for him, actually, as it turns out. So I mean, that stuff, like personal stuff like that, I really look forward to. But in the realm of the political, I think that there's something so profoundly amazing that's going on in the country right now that I am so excited to see how it develops. And I think what people don't understand is that, I was making the point recently and someone on Twitter was arguing with me about it. And they were like, I was saying, look, this is like an amazing moment where you've got 70 plus million people who voted for Donald Trump. Probably at least 90% of them believe the election was stolen from them. They do not believe Joe Biden is the president. They believe their man is the president and this was robbed from him. They do not see government as a legitimate entity right now. Let me say one more thing. Even they'll think it's illegitimate, even if they will say Biden got the vote because Trump was treated so unfairly. Sure. His loss was not legitimate. So that's another fallback argument. Oh yeah. And there's a real argument to that. I mean, there's a really strong argument to make there. And then someone said to me, they go, oh, that's no different because look, Hillary Clinton basically said the Russians cheated and all of this. And I go, this is so much different for several reasons. I got to ask you, doesn't that drive you crazy? I always find it to be such lazy thinking when people are like, well, both sides are the same. It's like, just because there's similarities there's often much, with the interesting mind looks for the differences. Of course. And here are the differences in this situation. Number one, no one was really claiming what Trump's claiming right now. It's not the same thing. To claim that Russia interfered with some Facebook ads or something is not the same as Donald Trump straight up claiming this was a conspiracy from the highest levels all the way down to the most local levels of government to steal the election that he rightfully won. That's different. But the other thing that's hugely different is you think about the resistance trademark. That was the anti-Trump resistance. Well, were they resisting the cathedral? Of course not. They weren't. They were resisting one man who sat at the top of the executive branch of the federal government and could barely even control that branch. I mean, Donald Trump, what did he have? 7 loyalists out of the 3 million people who work for the federal, for the executive branch. I mean, it was nothing. And if someone from the CIA came out and said something negative about Donald Trump, they loved that guy. And if someone in the media, or if someone in, everyone except Trump was there here. They weren't resisting the cathedral. They were resisting one guy they didn't like. Trump supporters now are resisting the cathedral. They hate the president. They hate the deep state. They hate the mainstream media, as they'll call it, the lamestream media or whatever. They hate it all. And so that, I think, from any anarchist's point of view, is like an incredible, like loaded with potential development. And I'm really interested to see how this all shakes out.
Here's a point I made on Jesse Kelly's show this morning. This is going to be the first time since 1968 that the incoming newly elected president doesn't have the Senate, which has control over cabinet appointments. And all these binary thinkers on my Twitter were like, oh, it's not going to matter. The Republicans are going to cave. I'm like, they're going to cave on everything? They didn't cave on Kavanaugh. You're saying that if Joe Biden nominates Andrew Cuomo to be attorney general, that there's no chance that that's the fight they're going to pick? Because here's the difference. You're going to have a former president on Twitter berating Mitch McConnell and every single Republican and ginning up the base, being like, do not let this person through. He killed grandmas in New York, and now he's going to kill grandmas across the country. There's no possibility that this is going to blow up in Biden's face. You have to have that perfect vote on every single one. Yeah. You don't think they're going to take a chance to knock out one crazy nominee if they had that opportunity? Why wouldn't they? It's just a formality, but it's still something it's meat for the base. And
if you could pick the leader of your enemies, Biden is about as good a pick as you could have. I mean, like the idea that guy has to convince people that he is competent and like up for the task is that it's almost as if they let us pick the opposing team's goalie. And you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you can score on that guy every time. Yeah, so I'm very, very excited about this and what's going to happen in 2021. I've got some fun stuff happening in January. I can't wait to tell you about. And the book's half done. So that's awesome. Really, really, really excited. I was just talking about it a little bit with Tom on a phone call recently. Why is Skanks 2 days a week now, though? Oh, I don't know. Lewis convinced us to do it 2 days a week for a little while. It's part of like a special promotion that we're doing, but I don't really know all the details of it yet. But we're doing twice a week for now. Here's something I am looking forward to and I think is exciting, possibly in 2021. Do you predict that I'm sure you saw the gym in New Jersey where they made that viral video, Candace Owens shared it, where the guy's like, we got 1.2 million fines. We don't care. We're staying open. We're working out. Do you expect more brazen civil disobedience towards these lockdowns over the coming months? Yes. And I think that there is kind of this natural separation, and the type of separation that me and you should cheer on between the people who resist the lockdowns and the people who accept them. And there are these the type of people, the government is pushing the type of people who will not be told to live their life like cattle into a corner. And now we're going to find out what we're made of as a country. And I think that these people are like, to me, like some of the most heroic Americans that I've ever seen in my life are the people who are defying these orders and saying, no way. We're going to work. We will not let some fucking governor king tell us how we live every intimate detail of our life. And I think the more they push it, the more people are going to resist. There'll also be a lot of people who try to shame the people who resist, but I'm all for it. And I think it's the best hope we have. Something just clicked. We're going to have to do 2 events.
And in one event, I'm the blue pill guy, and the other event, you're the blue pill guy.
Ooh, I love
That's
it.
how we have to do it. We
I
have to
love
have
it.
2 events, like maybe like a month apart.
Yeah,
Oh my
that's
God.
great. Oh,
That's
I'm
gonna-
already starting because the red pill position isn't even as fun to play.
I know,
What
I know.
you want to play
I'm
is the
thinking
blue
of-
pill.
I want to be
And
the
we
heel. You
we
want to
play
be the
red pill.
villain.
Yeah, of course. We play red pill every day. That's our whole life. I want to play blue pill for a little bit. That's going to be so much fun.
It is going to be so fun to stand on that stage and call you a Nazi. And with this, like, I'm having a straight face, and you're going to be cracking up because you know it's like kind of a thing, but I'll be really good at it, and vice
We have
versa.
to do our best to stay in character. Treat it like
Yeah,
you're a real blue pill person and you're dealing with a real blue pill person.
This is
It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Okay, we really have to get okay. Dave, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this episode?
My favorite part of this episode was Tulsi Gabbard laughing in your face.
Hi, Tulsi.